Welcome to the Taylor Made Tasty podcast. I'm Taylor, retired serial quitter turned goal boss coach, speaker, and consultant. I believe a beautiful life starts with a beautiful mindset. Join me as we amplify confidence, resilience, and actionable tools on the road to quit quitting on you and your vision. You are worthy of your goals, so let's go get there. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Made Tasty, the podcast. Today's episode features a guest by the name of Lizzy Cangro. Our conversation surrounds something we all desire deeply, and that is to love our bodies unconditionally. And whether it's our own actions or inaction or ailments that are out of our control that have brought us to a place where loving ourselves is easier said than done, you are not alone in that. We all want to achieve unconditional body love, and today's episode is one step closer to help you in that journey. A little bit about our guest. Lizzy Cangro is an expert nutritionist, wellness coach, and multi-award-winning author with a passion for helping women stop calorie counting, enjoy eating without guilt, and confidently step into the body they love and sustain it even if they've been at war with their body for years. Please help me in welcoming Lizzy to the show, and let's get into it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you believe it's time for the annual Vision Board Party? It's back, Saturday, December 3rd. This Vision Board Party offers an empowering and imaginative goal-setting session where participants will learn the fundamentals of creating a vision board, but more importantly, break down big goals into attainable milestones for the coming year. The first part of the workshop consists of guided meditation, reflection, and journaling designed to open up the mind before we jump into action. The second half is dedicated to building the vision, where participants will transfer their goals into milestones with deadlines and ultimately into a graphic representation of their big dreams. You can find more information at taylormadetasty.com/vision board. And for all my podcast listeners, use code PODCAST for 10% off any package. Let's go get there in 2023. 3, 2, 1. Hi, Lizzy. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, this is an incredibly important topic we're diving into today, and I'm excited for our conversation because I've worked with close to 500 women at this point in my coaching career, and I can confidently say that we all want to achieve unconditional love for ourselves and our body, but that is so much easier said than done. And it's like, why is body love, much less unconditional body love, like so difficult to achieve?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And I think I've been thinking about this, and really it's a combination of external and internal structures that we encounter from the time that we're born. So we're all born with the potential to have unconditional love for our bodies. So if you look at a baby, I give the example of how babies are just obsessed with like their feet and their hands, and they're just in this state of pure unconditional love. But over our childhood, we get exposed to different structures. One of those being the diet industry, another being like our family and our kind of like family stories and beliefs. And those structures essentially are all telling us in some way that our bodies aren't perfect. And the diet industry is kind of something that I really dive into a lot in my work, because what I found is that the diet industry is responsible for us not feeling good enough in many respects when it comes to body image. And the reason why that is because that they're making money off of our own lack of unconditional love for our bodies. So when we buy into their system at some point in our lives, whether or not it's a product or a program, or even just the belief system that our bodies aren't good enough, then what we're saying is that we're just reinforcing that belief of I'm not good enough. And that kind of keeps us trapped. And the more that we do this and the more that we buy into the rhetoric of the diet industry, but also, you know, maybe we've heard our parents talk about their bodies in a certain way. Maybe we've heard things said in the playground about body image. That all becomes kind of embedded into our subconscious belief system until those kind of external stories and structures aren't just external, they're internal. And we develop what I call an inner mean girl. And this inner mean girl really keeps that, narrative going around in our heads every single day when we look in the mirror, when we have a piece of cake, when we go to the gym. And so what we have is that kind of, outside noise, but we also have that really loud inner mean girl that can reinforce that belief of not good enough or not worthy, or you fill in the blank.
Yes. I think too, the world around us, like kind of along that same line, isn't, I guess what I'm hearing is that the world around us isn't conditioning us to feel unconditional love either. There's a lot of media, social media, all of that stuff that we see that then feeds into our feeling of lack or feeling of comparison and all of that. And along the same lines, like our lives are ever changing. The difficult storms we have to face and seasons of our life being able to drastically change from one to the next. I mean, think of, the minute 2020 started to March of 2020, right? Like how quickly and drastically our seasons changed, and how so much of that played into the feelings of our bodies, right? Because our routines were completely different, everything. So our bodies are remarkable in that we put them through the good and the bad times. And I think there's this expectation to quote unquote always be our best, that when our body isn't at our best, we don't think we deserve that love. With that, we've all had moments of body love, like we've all had moments where we felt love for our body, but I think that we always sort of compare our bodies to that peak moment, whatever that was, like, oh, when I was this age, or when I accomplished this, fitness challenge, or whatever it is. And that it would be helpful in life to maintain body love always, right? To not feel like we have to constantly throw it back to that time when I was at this like body love peak, if you will. So do you have any insight on how we can bring unconditional body love through the good and the bad seasons in our life?
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned social media, because I feel like that is something that we have all had to kind of come to terms with. Growing up, it was all kind of in the magazines. And then when I was a teenager, Facebook kind of came along, and social media was just another avenue where we could go into that comparison, as you said. And I think what I've noticed more and more on social media, especially over the past couple of years, is this idea of, being at your peak. Peak in terms of how your body looks or how your body feels, and that having the potential to be used against us if we don't feel like we're at that point. And this comes from two different groups. This comes from kind of groups who, say that having unconditional love through your body means always eating clean, always being like in peak fitness, working out 7 days a week. And there's also this kind of like almost toxic body positivity on the other side that says that, if you ever want to make any changes to your body, that's, failing yourself, and, you should never want to change your body in order to have love for it. And so there are these two kind of groups on social media that say, like, this is what having unconditional love for your body looks like. This is what body love is. And if you're not doing this, then you're not meeting this expectation. And I think that's where we kind of get into the shame spiral and self-judgment of ourselves, that we think we need to always be in the same place in order to love our bodies. And my opinion is that there's this middle zone where we get to define on a day-to-day rolling basis, a fluid basis, what that looks like to us. And to really answer your question, I believe that it's about alignment. So if we're able to align to what feels good to us and align our behaviors and our thoughts to treating our bodies in a certain way, then that to me is a skill that enables us to always have love for our bodies. Because especially women, we're so fluid. Our bodies are changing in cycles, the month. We cycle through so many different phases just in 1 month. We're not meant to stay exactly the same. Our moods change, our bodies change, our food preferences change. And so I think having a really fluid approach to how we're able to treat our bodies is really, really important, as opposed to kind of like a linear, it must be at this place. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. It's such a complex subject and such a complex feeling too, and something that we talk a lot about this in my coaching, is like, we're always going to have to be working towards this, right? And as someone who has struggled with this unconditional love for so long, and I have healed a lot of the relationship that I have with my body, I know that there's a lot of people listening that are in the thick of it. And I would love for you to offer, like, what does it feel like? What does it look like to experience the unconditional body love? Like, how different is your day to day? Do you walk differently? Do you show up in life? And I sort of, we glamorize so many things that don't matter. And I'm like, let's glamorize the unconditional body love, like what it feels like, how it manifests in your life, and sort of how it can work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for those of you who are listening and are in the thick of it, like, I completely see you and I understand, because, I've also been on my own journey to achieving unconditional love for my body. I, as a 14-year-old, developed a 10-year eating disorder. I developed anorexia. And after recovering kind of in my 20s, I still was abusing myself mentally. So I kind of was physically abusing myself for a very long time as a teenager. But mentally, as I say, like that inner mean girl, she got particularly loud. And so it really is a journey, and something that requires a lot of self-compassion, and courage. And so I just kind of want to acknowledge anyone who's going through that, and that it's not, I know that sometimes it can feel like an impossible thing. So what I want to, if there's anything that you take away from this podcast, is that anybody can achieve unconditional love for their bodies. It is 100% possible. And to your question, when you do achieve that, for me, again, I think it does vary from person to person what it looks like. And, I can't tell you what having unconditional love for your body is for you. But for me, because I went through such a long eating disorder, it means having freedom with food, being able to go out to restaurants and pick whatever I want on the menu and just enjoy it and not have a second thought. And that in turn has ripple effects in terms of my relationship. Me and my husband are able to just, enjoy our time together, and I'm not worried about, that extra slice of cake after dinner or where we're going. I'm not trying to plan my food around us. Our life, we get to live our lives. I mention it in my book, but I had a lot of anxiety around my outward appearance and how I looked in photos. And so having unconditional love for my body, to me, means that I can have my photo taken. I can go on camera. I can show up. In my personal life, I got married this year. And so I could feel confident enough being in front of the camera that we have nice photos that we can look back on and I can appreciate. In terms of my business, it massively helps that I can show up on camera now because I'm more visible to people. And so the ripple effects really are huge when you have that love for your body, because not only does it affect our health and our wellness and our inner world, but it also massively kind of like has a reflection on our outside world, our relationships, our finances, our careers. So I think like it's something that I can't quite put into words. It's so foundational to everything in life.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said the ripple effect, because that's like a visualization of you starting here and that also affecting relationships in your own life, like you mentioned, and then also them affecting relationships beyond them, and how it can really just manifest into this like beautiful thing of somebody seeing you, let's say for you, you as an example, seeing you and going through what you went through and seeing like, okay, there is the other side to this, then that can ripple effect into their life too. So I love the beauty of that, is like the better you are, the better you show up, the better you show off your gifts and love, can truly have an impact on everyone around you. Uh,
Absolutely.
so we live for action in this corner of the internet, and I'm excited to talk about actionable tools that can be provided, because you have 12 rebellious acts to achieve unconditional love for your body. And what I enjoy about how you word that is the rebellious act. It's like as if it's a rebellious act to go against everything that maybe your mind and the world is telling you, right? The rebellious act against society or media. And so I would love for you to share these 12 rebellious acts to achieving unconditional love for our bodies with us.
Yeah. So I think everybody wants to be a rebel, right? Like there's a part of us that just kind of like loves the idea of just kind of rebelling. And as a result of my own journey, I came up with these rebellious acts in our nutrition, our movement, and our mindset so that I could share in a very step-by-step, simple way with other people the tools that I found very effective in shifting from that place of really self-loathing and self-hate into a more self-accepting and peaceful place. So if we have time, I will go through all 12 rebellious acts. But I think the first one that really kind of calls to me to talk about is that rebellious act of trusting our guts. And this really came from my origin story that I shared, where I developed my eating disorder. And my eating disorder came from a place where I didn't trust myself with my food. As a 14-year-old, I baked my granddad a cake to help him feel better whilst going through chemotherapy. And he sadly died a couple of days afterwards of a heart attack. And I thought, in my naive 14-year-old head, that I had something to do with him dying because I baked him this cake. Because at school, I think it was at school, we were talking about healthy eating, and I had this awareness that cake was, in inverted commas, unhealthy. So that was my first experience of not really trusting myself with food. And I started to dive, as I say, into the magazines at that point, about what healthy was. And I came across some very bad advice and misguided advice, and started to trust the external voices about how I should nourish my body. And as a result, I got very, very sick. And by the age of 22, I developed osteoporosis in my lower back. So weak bones, like chronically weak bones. And this is something that's normally associated with women in their 60s and beyond. And so the rebellious act of trusting your gut is really close to my heart, because it really is about taking our power back and trusting our own bodies with what it needs in order to be nourished. So some people call it intuitive eating. I call it trusting your gut, because it really is, honoring that gut-brain connection. We have this really powerful tool called our gut that's directly connected to our brains. And so really working with that is just so powerful. And that's what a lot of clients come to me for, is to reclaim their trust in food. And we do that via these kind of intuitive eating tools. So that is rebellious act number 1. I'm doing it out of order to the ones that I cover in my book. So that was, I think it was chapter 7, trusting your gut. But that one's a really powerful one, I believe, in terms of how we nourish our bodies with food. Another rebellious act that I talk about is moving for pleasure and not punishment. And this also really ties into my experience as a teenager, where I loved dancing as a kid, and then I discovered running, and the school that I went to had a massive playing field, and they kind of encouraged us to do cross-country running, and I discovered I was kind of good at it. So I was like, oh great, okay, cool, I'm going to do this running thing. But again, as I became a teenager and started trying to really read these magazines and try to be, again, like in inverted commas, healthy, I took running to the extreme. And unfortunately, the more that I ran, the skinnier I became, because I wasn't fueling myself. But the more I ran, the better I got. So the more validation I got from the boys at school. And because I was getting skinnier, I got validation from the girls at school. And so I was literally being reinforced again from the outside voices that this was a healthy thing, when in fact it was causing me to be very underweight. I think I got down to, it was like 39 kilograms, which is like 80 pounds. And I had a heartbeat of like 30 beats per minute. So that was severe, really, really dangerous. And when I got taken to the doctors and got sent straight to the emergency room, they were like, okay, you're not going to move at all. And so they were actually worried that I was going to die of a heart attack, which is kind of ironic, considering this whole thing started from my granddad dying of a heart attack. And that put the fear of God into me, that I couldn't move my body at all. And so there was this whole spectrum of, really extremely exercising, and then for years after that, not wanting to exercise at all, because I was worried that I was going to die. And so I kind of healed this relationship with exercise by rediscovering my passion for dancing, actually. And dancing is something that I do that brings me a lot of joy, just for the sheer fun of it. I just love dancing. And so I really encourage other people to consider what types of movement bring them joy, as opposed to what type of movement they feel like they should be doing. Should we be doing cardio? Should we be doing strength training? Should we be doing yoga? It doesn't matter so long as we're having fun with it. So move for pleasure and not punishment. My movement for pleasure and not punishment is primarily dancing and running, now that I have kind of healed that relationship. But again, it really is a matter of you defining what that looks like for yourself. So those are the two key ones in terms of how we physically treat our bodies. I don't know if like you can relate to either of those in terms of your experiences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like I don't know if you've ever heard the term earn your weekend. That was like a big buzzword of whatever, of like your fitness and earning your weekend. And so that has kind of been a topic of discussion. But I definitely agree, as moving through healing thoughts and feelings about my body and becoming more into that unconditional love space, that movement is so beautiful and magical. And it's like, what can I be capable of at the size that I am right now? And I even have like a mission statement that I say is to set the standard that you can reinvent what is possible at any size and any age,
I
because
love
I
that.
am reinventing what is possible for someone that looks like me. And what's cool about it is like the more that you share that, again, this like ripple effect, right? Is like the more that I share. I took up running about a year ago too. And so the more that I share that I'm training to run a marathon, and maybe someone doesn't have that same goal, but they do look like me, it's like they see that. And I've had people tell me, like, I didn't think I could run until I saw someone like me running. And so that's been like a really cool little ripple effect of that. But it's true. It's like out of pleasure and not punishment, and enjoying how you're working out. I don't always enjoy running. I have a very much love hate relationship with it. But it for right now. That is for a big goal of mine, and a lot of that is mental versus physical. But finding what excites you, what lights your soul on fire, what makes you feel alive through movement, could be something as simple as turning on a song and just dancing it out. It doesn't always have to be like I need to be drenched in sweat in order to like prove something that, oh, I ate this, so now I need to
Yeah,
punish my body in this way, right? So I think that's
100%.
a beautiful one.
Yeah, and I love that you're kind of documenting your journey. I think that's so inspiring and really rewarding for not only you to kind of look back on, but other people to really use as inspiration as to what's possible, and to see it from a very real human standpoint. Because you're right, like some days maybe you're really feeling running and other days maybe you're sort of like, oh, the weather's not as good. And so I really love that authentic, genuine um, account of how you're how you're doing
Thank
that. That's
you.
awesome.
Thank
Really,
you.
really cool.
I
Um,
try to always show up that way. Genuine,
yeah,
real, like it's not easy. And like I mentioned earlier, this is something we have to work on. This is not you're out of the gate at any time on life and all of a sudden, yes, things may click and you may run on all cylinders for a period of time, but then something can happen that makes you question things, or something happens and you're not able to move the same way that you were before. So then again, like not throwing it back to that peak moment in life, or comparing it to somebody else's peak in life. And so this is something we're going to constantly always have to be working on. And
absolutely.
it's a it's a curse, and it's also we get the privilege of doing that, in that we are self-aware and taking self-inventory constantly of how we're feeling, because we want to grow and we want to be better and we want to hit goals and we want to get the most out of life and see this big vision towards the end, right? And so it's like we that's why we do this work, is because of us wanting to be, quote unquote, the best version of ourselves, right? So it's beautiful and also hard.
It can be hard. It can feel really hard sometimes because it involves getting out of our comfort zone a little bit sometimes, and that in itself can feel threatening and kind of scary. And I think really the key is to regulate our nervous system in a way that we do step outside our comfort zone, but it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And I think, like you said, like recognizing that we do go through these seasons, and we're just doing our best and being open and vulnerable about it is really, really important. And that's actually one of my rebellious acts, is being vulnerable and being open and authentic, and just saying like, hey, I'm a real person, and accepting that we're not perfect, and that this need to be perfect all the time is just another way that our inner mean girl tries to keep us stuck, keep us feeling not good enough.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a rule, quote unquote rule, in my coaching program where it's like, show up where you are. Like, if you're not an expert at this, you may be an expert at this one thing, but if you're not an expert at this other thing, it's okay. Just start where you are. And it takes vulnerability to do that, though, because I feel in this world, everyone wants to portray that they are great at all the things. And so when we get that vulnerability and we're able to show up authentically and say, I need help with X, Y, or Z, or I'm not feeling that unconditional love for myself today. That vulnerability then leads to important conversations, whether it's with yourself or with the group around you that support you, and that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like by opening up, you're really creating these connections that actually have meaning. And I think more and more as humans, we're craving that connection. Just look at 2020, where we felt so isolated, and now we're all just crying out for that authentic, genuine connection. And I think vulnerability is such a powerful way of doing that and achieving that. And as you say, being vulnerable in a coaching scenario is really powerful, because you can then get support out of that, and you can really benefit from it. And that's another rebellious act, is having a cheer squad, having that support team. Because what we can do is, if we are somebody who is a perfectionist, or for some reason wants to do it on our own, it can be very, very hard to take that journey of stepping into the body that you love, because there are going to be barriers and challenges along the way. And having a support team with experts like you to guide on that journey is so essential. And I know through a very long time, I wanted to do things on my own, and I struggled through a very long time on my own. And it took a lot of vulnerability to say like, hey, I'm really, really stuck. Like, can I get some help here, please? And that does not mean that we're being weak. It does not mean that we're not capable or not good enough. It just means that we're having someone there on the sidelines going, oh, have you considered this? Or, yay, well done, you stepped out of your comfort zone today. And that is a really powerful motivator and way of continuing on the journey. It's like going back to our discussion about running. A marathon runner has a support team, right? Only you're running the race, but you'll have a support team on the sidelines cheering you on, offering you some water, maybe some energy gels, whatever it is, to help you get to the finish line. Whereas if you tried it on your own, it would be a lot more difficult. So yeah, I think having a support team behind you is essential in any journey, but especially loving your body.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing a few of the rebellious acts. I know 12 would be a long discussion. So
it's like the 12
as
days
to
of Christmas.
as to not overwhelm the listeners, let's say if you were to recommend one simple action towards today to get closer to that unconditional love, what would that be?
I think it really essentially goes back to looking internally and asking yourself, what is the one step that I want to take? So we talked about different things that we could do in terms of our nutrition, our movement, and our mindset. So maybe it's a case of picking one of those things and going, all right, well, maybe I'm going to today tune into what feels good for my body in terms of my movement, and then just do that. And it really is a case of tuning into what is my one step that I'm going to do today, and just do one thing at a time, take it step by step. And whatever step you choose to do, have that self-compassion that it doesn't always have to look perfect, and just keep taking one step at a time, and know that it is that journey that we've been talking about.
Absolutely, yes. Well, you shared some of your journey, but I would love to hear about your business and then how listeners can connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. So my book that we were talking about is called Reclaim the Rebel, and it's available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com if anyone wants to check out that. And then probably the best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is @nutrition by Lizzy, and Lizzy is spelled with a Y. And if you give me a follow and DM with the word gift, then I have a little goodie bag for you just to help you with some more tools to step into the body that you love. So that's me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your expertise today, Lizzy, and sharing some rebellious acts to achieve unconditional love for our bodies. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor.
All right, y'all, it is time for the quote of the episode. This quote is from Jeannie Roth. Your body is the piece of the universe you've been given, the place where love and joy and grief happen, where happiness unfolds. Do you really want to keep believing that it's a horrible, ugly, lumpy thing? Take that into your week, your month, and maybe even your year, and bring some unconditional love towards your body. You deserve it. You are worth it. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in my community. I'm so glad you showed up today, and let's go get there. Look at you, crushing it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Tailor Made Tasty podcast. My hope is you always leave with a takeaway to implement in your own goal-crushing journey. I would love if you could take a moment to leave a review. And if you're looking for a community of goal boss badasses just like you, be sure to check out tailormadetasty.com/membership.